Hello my friends! In this lecture we will talk about transitions in Alpine.js. Please go to their page alpinejs.dev. Here let's click on Dive In to come to the documentation page, and then here on the left under Directives we go to X transition. So I have to say that compared to the last version of Alpine.js, at least the documentation of this feature really has improved. Alright, so to do a transition in Alpine.js you have two possibilities. The first one is the transition helper as it is said here, and the second one is with CSS classes. In this lecture we will check out the transition helper here. Alright. Let's go to our editor and please open up the file 3_transition_modifiers.html, which is in the folder theory part 2. If we have a look in the browser on this file, you will see this funny colorful squares here everywhere. So we have altogether 6 examples that we will do. It starts here with example 1, then 2, then 3, and then here 4, 5, and 6. If you look in the source code of this lecture here, let's scroll down a little bit. There I always wrote also the color of the square here in a comment, so you know which example we are working on right in the moment. Alright, so all those examples here, apart from example 4, but all the other examples, they have already a toggle of visibility here for this square. So if you click on this button here, the square disappears and appears again, and with the other guys it's the same thing. Alright. All we want to do now is to add some transition effect on this switching on and off. Okay, let's start with the first example, the orange one. We want to use X transition standalone here. I'm gonna copy this word X minus transition. Let's go to the editor, and here in example 1 we have always a button first, that's the button, and underneath we have this div that we want to hide or show. So here we have already the X show is visible, that means the square shows when the property visible is set to true. And underneath that we will paste in just a simple plain X transition. Now let's check this out in the front end. And what we have now, if we click on this, is a little transition. If you compare here to the blue one, this goes very instantly. But the orange one has already a slight transition. It's very fast and it's kind of subtle, but it's maybe a little nicer user experience already. So for everyone that thinks that this is much too fast, you can make the transition slower. And this we do with the duration modifier. So we just add to this X transition a modifier of duration, and then again we add a modifier or a number in milliseconds. And all this is connected with a dot, okay? So X transition dot duration dot 5000 milliseconds, and this will make our transition last 5000 milliseconds or 5000 seconds. At least it should be like this, but let's try it out and we will see what happens. So let's go to our source code. Here in example 2, blue. Here again under the X show visible we paste in what we just copied. Let's save and let's check this out. Now if I click on this button, you will see it fades out very slowly. And then I click again for the fade in, and it fades in also quite slowly. But if you look closely, you will notice that in my example, actually the fading out is slower than the fading in. Let's try it again. I do the fading out, and I will count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 seconds, more or less. Now I will do the fading in. 1, 2, 2.5, and it's there. Okay, so it fades out in 5 seconds, but it fades in about 2.5 seconds. That's 2500 milliseconds. Now let's have a look in the documentation if there's any information about this. And actually there is. If we go here to customizing duration in the documentation, here he has the example that he put 500 milliseconds as a duration, and he says that 500 milliseconds will be for the entering transition, that means for the showing, but only 250 milliseconds, so that's half, for the leaving, that means for the hiding. But actually, right now, it's the other way around. It's completely the opposite, okay? In my case, it's like this, that when I'm leaving the transition, it's 5000 milliseconds, and when I'm entering, it's 2500 milliseconds. And that's exactly the opposite. I already wrote to Caleb about this little bug, but I think he's too busy to read my messages. So just for you, it's good to know that there's a little bug right now, or maybe when you see this video, this bug has already been fixed and it will be the correct way around, so that you have a default of leaving that is double as fast as entering. That's how it should be. However, it's not a problem for us because we can fix this, and let's look to example 3 now. Hang on a second, I will just put this here a little bit up so you can see it better. So now we will do example 3. And in example 3 we can specify our own durations for entering and for leaving. So you can do it like this, that you have a syntax like that, X transition, and then there comes a colon, and then you say either enter or you say leave. And then after this enter or leave comes the modifiers for the timing here. Okay? Let's copy this example here. And let's paste it in the green example here, example number 3. So here's example number 3. I go to my div again here, and under the X show, I will paste that in. So here I specify an enter duration of 600 milliseconds and a leave duration of 300 milliseconds. Let's just for test, let's make it double as long, 1200 and 600, so we can see it very clearly. Let's test it. So I click on it. It goes away quite fast. It's only 600 milliseconds, and then the entering is clearly slower. That will be 1.2 seconds. But actually I put a proposal of 600 and 300 milliseconds here because, in my opinion, these are good times that you use in a standard case of showing or hiding something, right? So let's go back to this standard case that I propose to you, which will be 600 for showing and 300 for leaving. I always recommend for the leaving process to have a shorter time, because if you want to have something going away, you want to go it away fast. All right. So now it looks like this. Leave, enter, leave. Okay. Now let's go to example number 4. So example number 4 is a little bit different. Here I have a very simple kind of menu under this button. Okay. So what I want to do is that I show this menu when I have a mouse enter on this button, and when I have a mouse leave, it should go away. But it shouldn't go away immediately. I want to have a delay before it goes away. So I'm gonna start with this mouse enter and mouse leave here. So I'm gonna copy those 2 lines here first. All right, let's go to the editor. Example number 4. And here is the button. So first we put something on the button, which are event listeners for mouse enter and mouse leave. All right. All right. Let's check this out. Now, I leave the mouse, the menu's gone. I enter the mouse, the menu's there. Like this. Okay, that works. Now let's add a transition here to the entering and leaving. And I'm gonna copy those 2 lines down there with X transition. We have our div, and I go again under the X show is visible. All right. So I have an enter duration of ½ a second and a leave duration of 0.2 seconds. But I have a delay of 3000 milliseconds, so 3 seconds before it leaves. So what you do is you do the normal enter and leave duration, and then after that you can add this delay modifier and then specify the length of the delay in milliseconds. All right, save, and let's check this out. So actually what I'm gonna do now, first thing I'm gonna do is I set the visibility here to false, because that is the default that our menu is closed. Let's go back. Now the menu is closed. I enter and the menu fades in 500 milliseconds. Then I leave and the menu is still there. Wait. And then after 3 seconds, it leaves. So this you can use for cases where you have a little whatever kind of menu on your web page, like some action you can do with some button on the top right of your page or something, and you want to give the user some time to do something, and if the user doesn't want to do something in the submenu, then after 3 seconds the submenu disappears. I think in some cases it does make sense. All right, let's do example 5 now, where you can add a modifier of opacity or scale. Please note that you cannot mix opacity and scale modifiers in Alpine.js version 3, which is a pity, because in Alpine.js version 2 you could mix those. Maybe in the future it will be mixable again, but right now it isn't. All right. That's why I also wrote here exclusive opacity and scale. Let's do the first example. I'm going to copy those 2 lines here and I go to example 5. And again, after X show is visible here in example 5, I'll paste that in. All right. So what we have here is an enter transition with 1 second and a leave. Actually, there's a mistake here. it should be leaf here. I'm gonna correct that. And a leaf transition of 1 second. And then in both of them, I added this opacity modifier. Let's see how that looks. Now, as you can see, we have a real fade now. The size isn't changing, just the opacity is changing here. It's a real fade. Let's try out example 2 down here. This one with the scale and the 0. Let's go back to the editor and I'm just put it here on the same position. Right. And this time we have a duration of 1600 milliseconds, and then on each of them I added a scale of 0. I mean scale and then a 0, which means the percentage. Right? Now let's check this out. And now it scales down to 0 and it grows from 0 to the full size again. Right? Like this. The thing is, I put a scale of 0% here. And this is the only value that really makes sense actually. Because, at least in my example, because if I put a value of, let's say, 50% here, then it doesn't look good. Because then it will be like this, that it shrinks and then in the middle suddenly it disappears, and the other way around also doesn't look really good. So if you use scale, in most cases probably you have to use another modifier with a percentage of 0. Alright? Let's go back to 0 here. Alright. That was opacity and scale. And now let's go to example 6. In example 6, we can do sliding in, a kind of sliding in from certain directions or even from the corners. So I prepared 2 examples here, and each example has only 1 line this time. So I'm gonna copy the first line here and put it here into my div again. In example 6, let's see what we have here. We have a scale and we start with the origin of left. So the scaling starts on the left. We will see how this looks like. So it is like this, okay? The scaling starts here on the left side, right? Or let's use the other one. This time it will be the top right. I'm just gonna paste this here at the same position. And now it will fade in, or it will scale in from the top right. Okay. So again, I'm not very satisfied with this feature. And please, this is no criticism for to the creator of Alpine.js. I know he did an incredible job programming this Alpine.js completely alone. But I think it would be better that if we had something like a real slide, for example, from the left. Okay, let me just show you how it would look if we would use a scaling in from the top, like this. I would like it much better if we really had a slide down from the top. Maybe this will be a feature in the future version of Alpine.js. But anyway, of course we can do this sliding in from the top, and I will show you how to do this in the next lecture. right? In the next lecture, we will use this CSS classes here. And there, if we use this method, which is a little bit more complicated, we can do literally everything, okay? So just again, to make it clear for you, the last example with this origin modifier, it only works together with scale, all right? All right, guys, that's it for this lecture. I look forward to see you in the next lecture. Bye-bye.